I just want to respond to your query about these incidents that you spoke about, how women in Manipur have been egging the menfolk to resort to acts of violence. Now, you have to remember one thing, Brijesh, that traditionally Manipur is a patrilineal society, but women in that society have a lot of say in any political or social discourse in that state. Now, I just want to tell you that women in Manipur have also been in the forefront of leading campaigns, political or be it social. The last time such an incident took place, or when Manipur caught people's imagination, was in the incident of 2004, where 4 or 5 Manipuri women stripped their clothes and stood outside an army camp in Kangla Fort saying, "Rape us." Basically, they were protesting against the Armed Forces Special Powers Act and also making a statement that, look, when men cannot come to the forefront, we will be the one who will take the banner. So it's not very unusual that women at times, more often than not, in the northeastern states have taken the lead on political issues, on social issues, or issues which have concerned the society as a whole. So probably that explains those videos that we have been getting where women have been seen to be egging on the men folk to resort to violence.
Mr. Dongle, you wanted to respond to Dr. Rajesh?
Yes, certainly. We have seen how Ashok Ji has also mentioned about women folk protesting in 2004 against the removal of AFSPA, and that was because Manorama was raped, and sadly she was raped by the Assam Rifles at that time, and eventually the women folk, the Meira Paibis, were stripped themselves in front of Kangla Gate, and that's how the state and the center came heavily on the Assam Rifles, and that led to the removal of the Assam Rifles in the state of, in Kangla. And now Kangla is now occupied by the people of Manipur. Now, I believe that the 2004 incident, wherein the Meira Paibis stripped themselves off and realized that that can be a great weapon for them to have their way, seems to be emanating even at this stage of violence. You see how 12 terrorists, Meitei terrorists, were protected and guarded by the Meira Paibis and were standing as a shield against the Indian Army, and that's how they got released. And we have also seen at several instances wherein these Meira Paibis have acted as a speed breaker, or otherwise as a shield in several areas, and have warned the Indian armies that they will strip themselves off. Hum kapre utarega. That's how they have warned the Assam Rifles, or be it the Indian Army, who are trying their best to bring peace and normalcy in the state, and in conducting the combing operations. So acting as a hurdle, the Meira Paibis today have used, stripping themselves as a weapon, or otherwise as an agent to have their way. Now it is very sad how, as I've mentioned earlier also, how these Meira Paibis, whom we have a lot of faith, whom we have a lot of regard earlier, that they're the torchbearer of truth and justice in the state, have today become propagator of, so to say, violence, or otherwise at least allowing the men folk from the valley to commit atrocities freely, they being acting as a scene. And we have also seen how in Imphal Valley, the 2 women of the belong to Kuki-Jo community on 4th May were handed over by the Meira Paibis to their men to rape, and that video circulated, and nothing has been said about them. They were raped, brutally raped, murdered, and their bodies still lying at Reams morgue, and they have not been identified yet by the family members. So the use of Meira Paibis and the use of stripping themselves off has become a modus operandi by
Okay.
the Meira Paibis.
Okay,
That
Mr.
allows
Dongle,
or otherwise
I'll come back to
perpetuate
you.
violence in the state.
Okay, Mr. Dongle, I'll come back to you, but first I'll go to Professor Prasenjit and then I'll go to Hasina. Professor, do you see that this video, as you know, Mr. Dongle said that blessing in disguise, he used a word, so that it jolted everyone into seeing the kind of dark underbelly of what is happening in Manipur for the last 70 days. He used that word in that context. Do you see this video forcing the hands of the government to ensure that some sort of political dialogue be initiated, some sort of action seen on the ground, which can, I'm hoping that which will see some sort of normalcy returning back to the state of Manipur, sir?
Normalcy is actually far away. I mean, if we have to understand the implications of these kind of videos and the kind of orchestrated violence, as I can see, that there is a cycle of violence operating, violence, counter violence, act and its revenge, in equal proportion. And thereby, there is a kind of a obfuscation of reality for the government and forcing everyone to take some side or the other. Those of us who do not want to take any side, but want to see that justice is done to everyone so that the political, moral, social claims of justice are satisfied within the democratic system, this entire rational democratic way of thinking is just disrupted by this kind of an orchestrated money for ethnic minorities. And this is a very dangerous, slippery slope. On the one hand, where you have this majoritarian sentiment, I won't include and generalize the entire Meitei community, but people who are orchestrating violence, they don't belong to a community. The sanctity, the sacredness of a community, the great cosmology, culture, art, and the humanity of the majority community of Manipur is undermined by those perpetrators. The community has to identify these people, have to restrain them, and state has to use a proper strategy of containment, a proper strategy of bringing them under law, and not to allow the impunity that is built up based on such an incident and perpetuating it further in the form of a larger sequence of violence, which is yet to follow. And it seems that the ground reality is so fragile, anytime it can break. So we have to really not only strengthen the security system, but we have to bring back the basic sense of democratic values. We have to bring back a kind of moral condemnation of all kinds of perpetrators. If we are not able to do that in public domain, in our civic discourse, no state can restore itself to a certain kind of a peace. So Manipur situation has to be understood in its multidimensional complexity. If we are not able to understand it, taking up one aspect of it and fighting it piecemeal is not going to result into any kind of peace process. So therefore, it's ultimate of heinousness that has happened in this, ultimate barbarity that has happened in this kind of a case. I remember Hutu versus Tutsi fighting. Such barbarities we have seen there. Now Manipur or any Indian state doesn't deserve this kind of a situation, because we have, after 75 years of independence, we have evolved into a civilized state. The entire world is looking at us. Our people, our communities are doing extremely well. And on the other side, you have this dark underbelly of violence, this cycle of violence and counter-violence, taking revenge and retaliation all the time, and using certain pockets of population as a tool for that. This process must come to an end, and every responsible citizen, every committed political party, every civil society group must really come forth and see that such a process comes to an end. Otherwise, we are really heading towards a major disaster, a major calamity that will afflict all our lives, that will lead to loss of everything that we have in this country. So it's ultimate baseline, bottom line that we have hit now. We have to really revive from here. If we are not able to, that will be a measure of great, great shamefulness, which should not happen anymore. This is a sincere appeal. Yeah.
That's very, very wisely put, Professor. Hasina, do you see this video further damage the ties of whatever left is between the Kukis and the Maitis?
This video is bringing more, I would say, a situation of distrust, a situation that will actually aggravate if it's not going to be addressed, by the state that has failed to address. And I think the government of India will need to really act upon it. I mean, India is a democracy. India is a country which is civilized, that has moved forward, that has developed, that has anchored many, many new processes in the world. So why is it that a country like India is failing to ensure, being the largest democracy, that the constitutional law is taking, so long to give justice or to act or to give any kind of response, and fail to give law and order support to a state in Manipur for the last 70 days? This is the biggest question. How can we, who believe on human rights, who actually stand by human rights, who believe in the Constitution of India, today we are standing, waiting for that action that should send strong messages so that this kind of law and order situation does not create more sexual violence or does not create more disparities amongst people and distrust, where the conflict is going to rise further. I think this is the biggest question as a country we need to ask. Each one of us are condemning. Police today has acted by arresting the people, understood. But then do they going to send a strong message of what kind of action is going to be given to them? Are they going to send this message that any crime like this, which is more like a hate crime among communities, that there will be strong law that will be acted on them? I don't think that message has gone. The chief minister should give one message, that all the law enforcement in the state of Manipur will have to really get back to the ground and find out if there are more violences like this, to act upon it, to send a strong message so that this kind of violence does not increase every day. And at least people need to report on this. They need to be given that support system to report the situation.